Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Talk Healing to Me podcast. It's Karen Dwyer here, and today's episode is a deeply personal one. I recently had the absolute pleasure of sitting down in person in Los Angeles with Livi Redden, who, if you don't know her yet, is a powerhouse voice for the next generation. She's a speaker, author, TED talker, and mentor for young adults. Her TED Talk, What No One Tells You About Your 20s, has racked up over 2 million views, and for good reason. What really struck me most during our conversation wasn't just her wisdom or her sparkling energy for that matter, it was her story, her openness about growing up with a terminally ill parent, and how that shaped her inner world. It really hit home for me, and I know it will for many of you too, because when anyone is managing illness or stress or any major life challenge, we try so hard to protect our kids. We want to be strong for them, we don't want to burden them, but they still see and they still feel. And sometimes they carry things we never intended them to. Today, I want to share 10 takeaways from that powerful conversation, blended with some of my own reflections as a mother, as a coach, and a human who's still learning every day to hold the hard and the beautiful all at once. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your doctor. Views shared are personal and not a substitute for professional guidance. So the first takeaway was children are always observing, even when we think they aren't. So Livy shared how growing up, she thought she came out of her dad's illness unscathed. And it wasn't until years later that she realized her body had stored the stress, the anxiety, and the responsibility, frankly. And this made me think how many of us, well, we try to keep everything together on the surface, I suppose, but our nervous systems are firing on all cylinders underneath. And how might our kids, even the most independent ones, be picking up those invisible signals? I remember when my eldest daughter was really young and my grandparents, my nanny and granddad Kelleher, had Olin out for a drive. And I think she was only about 2 or 3 at the time. And I remember my grandmother saying to me, she takes in everything. And she really does. And I'm sure if you have kids or no kids, they might pretend to not be listening, but they are taking in everything. And I mean, we know with other people as well. If somebody walks into and actually, I know this with my kids. If they walk into a room, they don't even have to say anything. I know by how they're breathing that they're going to ask me for something or that they might be upset. They don't actually have to say anything. So we pick it up. And that's as an adult. But can you imagine when you're kids and you don't have all of those other worries or stresses? They're so well tuned in to everything around us. The second takeaway, love is not about minimizing your needs. One of the most powerful moments in our conversation was when Livy reflected that for a long time, she thought love meant not having needs, that showing love to her mum meant not being a burden. And as a parent, that stopped me in my tracks. And truth be told, I had to stop the podcast recording 4 times because I kept crying every time I talked about that. I never want my kids to think love is self erasure, like that they have to be fine so I don't worry. It's it's such a fine balance caring for them while also showing them that we're human too. And that needs to be, I mean, those needs are part of love, and that's okay to be supported. And I think, you know, it's very obvious when somebody is worried about something, but sometimes kids get really good at masking their thoughts or their feelings. And that I find that really upsetting to hear because you can imagine little Livy and, maybe having her own worries or concerns and then not saying it to her mom. And then I think of my own kids and think, oh goodness, what have they not said? And maybe you might think back to your own childhood when you might have been worried or stressed about something and you didn't want to say whatever you felt like you needed to. Like that communication piece and learning how to communicate our needs. And honestly, this is such a brilliant part about the work that Livy's doing, and she's doing it with teens and 20 somethings. But I really wish this was taught in schools. We learn maths and algebra and all those brilliant things that, serve us possibly. But then emotional regulation and being able to communicate effectively. I mean, I'm still learning, I'll be honest with you. The third takeaway is no two kids will respond the same. So Livy talked about how her and her sister responded differently to their dad's illness. One retreated inward and the other sought escape. And it's a powerful reminder that our children process life in unique ways. And it's not our job to mold them into coping well or coping in a particular way. It's our job to meet them where they are and to help them name what they feel, even if it looks different to what we expect. We talked offline a little bit about, there can be the same story, but there might be two or three stories about it, and they're all truth, depending on that person's view or experience of the same thing. So it's so important to meet people where they're at. And that's exactly what we do in MS to Success. We have people like that would show up or present with the same symptoms, but each person's treatment is completely different because people have different values and beliefs and experiences and maybe even trauma. So what works for one person may not work for another. It's why it's so important to individually treat, whether it's a kid or an illness. It's so, so important. The fourth takeaway, speaking of chronic illness, was chronic illness affects the whole family. And this is something that I see in my work all the time. A diagnosis just doesn't belong to one person, it ripples. And everyone adjusts and adapts and maybe tiptoes or compensates. And yet, so often, support is only offered to the person with the diagnosis. We had our family, friends, and loved one call last week, and I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think it's important to chat about now because there was a common theme. Um, and really, this was a theme that, like we were saying, it does affect everyone, but being a well spouse, it really takes courage to want better health for the person that's dealing with the chronic illness or the challenge, whatever it is in life. Um, and that's why it's really important to have people around you, to cheer you on, to lift you up and walk the journey with you is so important. But here is something that we often forget. Those supporters, the partners, the parents, the siblings, the friends, they need support too. The call that we did just gave them space as being the well family members or the well spouses to be acknowledged and to feel seen and to better understand the experience of their loved one and to learn some simple, practical ways to care for themselves while being a support system. And I think the common theme is everyone worries. Some people talk about it and some don't. And sometimes it can feel like there are too many chefs trying to cook the one dish. But when there's clear and honest communication and when there's a plan tailored to the person's needs and tools to take the action and really a support system to integrate and celebrate, it changes everything. It's the magic formula that helps our clients get the lifelong lasting results. But I think the moral of the story is don't try to do it alone. Whether it's weight loss or a house move or managing multiple sclerosis, find the who, the person or the team who's already walked that road, like Livy. If it's support that you're looking for a child or a teenager, having a guide who can take the guesswork out of it. The community reminds you that you're not in it alone, but asking for help and receive it fully and giving yourself permission to succeed as well as those around you is such an important part in everything, I believe, but it's certainly one of the biggest pillars in the program, in the MS to Success programs. I think that the big takeaway in the fifth point was, kids need the truth, and just not maybe maybe not all at once. But Livy's mom did something incredible. She eased her kids into the truth. She didn't sit them down and dump everything in one terrifying conversation. She used gradual honesty and age appropriate language and emotional presence. As someone who's had to share hard truths in life, I think this is golden. We don't have to give them everything at once, but we do need to give them something because silence creates fear and vague answers create confusion, and it does have an impact on your cellular and emotional health, and that can last throughout the rest of your life. So it might be hard having that conversation, but I truly believe, and this is in personal experience as well, Don't lie to your kids if it's something that you can have a conversation about if you feel that they're capable of having it. But if you need to have a hard conversation and have that gradual honesty with them, please do that because they know they pick it up anyway. So you can share the parts, in my opinion, or in my invitation, share the parts that they can possibly deal with. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in the next couple of points.
This episode of Talk Healing to Me is sponsored by Clean Boss, created by Joy Mangano, the legendary inventor behind the Miracle Mop and a pioneer in clean innovation. Clean Boss is a botanical disinfectant that kills 99.9% of viruses, germs, and bacteria. It's safe for food surfaces, soft surfaces, and baby high chairs with no toxic ingredients and no rinse required. It's also a degreaser, odor eliminator, and all-purpose cleaner that works as hard as the chemical heavy stuff without the health risks. Check it out at getcleanboss.com/Karen for a clean, better, and living safer life.
The sixth takeaway was kids often parent themselves when they're struggling. So Livy described how she stepped into adult responsibilities at a young age and sometimes quite literally helping with medical procedures and how that shaped her sense of self. And it reminded me when our bandwidth is low, our kids sometimes rise to that occasion in ways that look like resilience, but can quietly build emotional pressure over time. And that's not something to feel guilty about. It's something to be aware of because then you can choose in a different way. And it's so powerful. And honestly, those thoughts are hard to face sometimes. But again, that honest communication really, really does help build a lifelong lasting health and happiness and joy within the family unit. Takeaway 7: your nervous system is a family member too. And this might sound strange, but hear me out. Your nervous system sets the tone of your home. And if you're anxious or on edge or sleep deprived, maybe even in fight or flight, it radiates. And look, I've seen this, and I even notice it. I'll be honest, I notice it around my menstrual cycle. I notice that if I'm getting cranky or if I'm getting tired, and even though I might not say anything, but it has an effect then on everybody else around you. And I'm not proud of that. Um, but it doesn't feel good because people pick up on it. Like I was saying about my kids earlier on, I notice if they're looking for something, they don't even have to say it, but I know I can pick up on it. And it's the same with how we're dealing with our nervous system as well. And as Livy said, she didn't even realize how dysregulated her own nervous system was until years later. Meditation and somatic tools helped her find a sense of safety again. So if you're listening and you've been living in that survival mode for a long time, just know your nervous system deserves care too, not just your to-do list. I mean, it's very easy to look through all the things we have to do in the week and, when do you get time to do that? And I can't remember who said the phrase, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, make sure you're doing 10. And it is that thing, if we're not prioritizing our needs or our nervous system, it does have an impact. And I think we can excuse that, oh, I'm having a busy day, but that turns into a busy week, and then it's a busy month, and then it's a busy year, and then all of a sudden you look back and go, I can't remember the last time I, you know, stopped. And then what I often find is we have, people maybe in the past that their nervous system is running so um, highly all the time that as soon as they slow down, that's when the nervous system then starts to collapse. Or people like live for their holiday just to be able to wind down. And actually, one point that I've noticed, and this came up in our family and loved one call as well, because sleep is an important part of our work too. But what we find is a lot of people who are really busy, moms in particular, will get maybe some time at the end of the day. And so they'll run through everything during the day, get everything done, have everyone else looked after, and then it's late at night and they might be tired, but they'll put off going to bed because it's the first time of the day they've had free time. And then that creates that cyclical motion of, okay, it's too late going to bed. And then I'm going to be exhausted. And then I'm going to wake up tired the next day. And then we have to go again. But that time is so sacred and so special because it's really needed for mental health. So, my invitation to you is if you are like that, take 5 minutes in the morning. Even if it's just to stare at a wall or stare out the window, even if it's 1 minute, I don't care what it is, but make sure there is time for yourself, especially in the morning, to kind of regulate and set the tone for your nervous system. That's my invitation to you anyway. I notice on the days when I don't do it, I'm certainly not as balanced. Takeaway number 8: Emotional openness builds lifelong trust. So Livy said she always felt emotionally safe with her mum. She could ask her questions. She knew nothing was off limits. And that's not about always having the right answers or the perfect response. It's about presence. It's about showing up with curiosity instead of control. And it builds a foundation that lasts beyond childhood, far beyond that. And, our kids' relationships then throughout the rest of their life, they learn to trust and to be able to communicate in a way that benefits every single part of their life. So I really liked that one. The ninth takeaway: there's no one right way to cope, and give grace. So I loved how Livy emphasized this. Whether it's a child, a partner, a parent, or even yourself, coping doesn't follow a neat formula. You might shut down. Someone else might lash out. Someone else might get ultra organized. I love a declutter when I'm stressed, personally. I do regret it halfway through when it's not finished and it's taken a lot longer, but it does give me that mental uplift for sure. But none of it means that you're doing it wrong if it's not a particular way. It just means you're human, and grace for ourselves and compassion for each other is the glue that holds families together through seasons, because it will happen. And goodness, there's no perfect family. And nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. But I think it is such an important part to allow yourself be perfectly imperfect. There is no right way, but I think not having a conversation or not, being open about it and trying to do it all by yourself is hard. It's really, really hard. The 10th and final takeaway: self-compassion is a skill we must teach and model. I mean, sometimes I find myself saying something to my kids and it's like they model what they see. So many of us grew up thinking strength was pushing through, not feeling, not needing help. But Livy's journey shows that self-compassion is a learned skill and one that we must teach, not just talk about, but it really means embodying the whole thing. And it means showing our kids how we care for ourselves, letting them see us rest, have a nap, set boundaries, ask for support, and feel our feelings. Because if we want them to grow up with emotional intelligence, we have to show them what it looks like first. It's okay to cry in front of your kids. It's okay. Let them see your emotion. Let them see how you deal with it. Share if something was hard. Share the lesson that you grew from it. And let them see your complete imperfections and where you fail, because it then gives them permission to show up imperfectly as well. That's hard sometimes when you're telling your kid, I really messed up on this, or I really, didn't do the right thing there. And actually be able to apologize as well. It is such a valid point in life. Before I wrap up, I just want to say this: Livi Redden is doing extraordinary work in this world. She's creating resources I wish I had in my teens and in my 20s. And she's helping a generation come back home to themselves. And if you haven't listened to the full episode with her yet, please go do that after this one. It's a conversation I'm so proud of. I want to give some shout outs to our clients this week. Again, so proud of them too. We have Zed, or Z, depending on where you are. She's in Dubai and she's been in the program 3 months. And when she came first, she wasn't sleeping. She had a huge amount of pain. In fact, she had to get up really early in the morning because she was waking from the pain and to do hours of exercise to even just stretch out her body to get rid of it. Now she's no more pain. She's sleeping all the way through the night and is starting going back out with her friends socially. I mean, how cool is that? She just had her 50th birthday a couple of weeks ago as well. And she's starting as she means to continue, which is so great. So big shout out to her and a big happy birthday. A was standing for longer, which meant she could cook for longer in the kitchen as well. And she's feeling super proud of herself, which is awesome. Another thing she mentioned on this call, the same person, was that she's getting a lot more confident in sharing her boundaries, sharing what her needs are, and having conversations that are important to her. So, not putting up with, stuff that maybe she used to facilitate in the past that really didn't work for her, used to stress her out. And that is such a major, major transformation. B, who's in the US, was able to walk around in public, which used to be an issue and not anymore. But she was able to, she mentioned going from the car park to an ice cream parlor with her mum. And she was able to just sit there and not worry about getting back to the car, not moving around. And it was a lovely surprise for her as well, which is great. And E, who's also in the US, I love this one because I think everybody deserves a medal after doing this. She was able to change the bed sheets without having to stop and take a break. Now, I don't know about you, but that is a stressful and sweaty thing to do. And in the past, she would have had to stop and take a break for mobility, for energy, for things like that. And now she's good. You can't beat fresh bed sheets. Shout out to all of them. That is it for today's Talk Healing to Me solo episode. Please subscribe, like, or follow, or share it with someone who might need it as well. And my podcast editor, Aoife, she never asks me for anything. She is so brilliant and so talented, but she has asked me to ask people to leave a review. It helps people find us better and helps share this work. So please, if you can, take 30 seconds, leave a review. You'll be doing me a favour, but you'll make me look good to Aoife as well. So until next time, be gentle with yourself. Be proud of how far you've come. And remember, healing doesn't just happen in the hospitals. It happens in conversations, in community, in the way we choose to show up day after day. Until next time, keep talking healing to yourself. Thank you to our sponsors of this episode. You can visit getcleanboss.com/Karen. And also a thank you to our video and podcast producer and editor, Aoife McNamara at Imagine Media. Thank you.